If anything is true about the last week's 7 days of Dota, it has given me the tiniest peek into the amount of fucking depth that there is in this game. It's really made me realise that the 28 hours that I was hoping to play it is really just scratching the surface. But I have also realised that I do not have to play games to be the best, so I can just enjoy the learning process and see where that takes me. My biggest gripe with the process so far is the complete lack of tutorialisation in the game. I can understand that it might be something that might not come up in the conversation anymore by the developers of Dota. A lot of players are pretty well experienced already and no one really cares about the newbies, but I think it can make it so much more accessible from the start and would make lower level matches a lot less frustrating and a lot more fun for everyone. There'll be concepts explained, you know, people will know what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing, and what's a good move and a bad move. But even with that in mind, I am looking forward to the next week of Dota. I've decided that with minimal time that I have to play this game, I should probably focus and play sort of either one hero a week or something along those lines. But if they do get picked by someone else on my team or banned, then I won't just disconnect, I'll continue with picking someone else. For this week it's going to be Juggernaut. I had a pretty lucky game last game with him and it was a lot of fun to, you know, sort of scope him out and see what he can do. I like the fact he can get in and out of trouble with his spin, you know, he has a devastating ultra and he also has the ability to heal, which is good for him and his team, and, you know, can get him in and out of sticky situations again. He's got that double hit, the Omni Slash I think, which means he can put out a lot of damage just by clicking, and I'd like to see the different ways that there might be out there for building him and what different techniques I can use to actually play him. At this stage I'd plan on watching a couple of videos to learn that and learn how to play him and what I might need to do better at the game. I also wonder if we'll see some more of that famous toxicity that MOBAs are famous for. But it'll be a good week and I look forward to see what lessons can be learned. Monday. Had a quick look through the levels of the various players. Seems like they had a pretty strong team. Looking at the levels actually gives me a small amount of peace of mind. If we were massively outclassed, losing doesn't feel so bad, or I keep telling myself anyway. So leading with this statement, guess whose team won? I got left behind massively, I'm not too sure why. If this was the sort of situation where I was actually wanting to get loads better at the game, I'd probably look at the replay, but I do not have time. So let's guess. 1. I was not aggressive enough in my lane. 2. This meant I did not get last hits. 3. The other player won their lanes. 4. I was shit at making the most of that post-laning phase. I think reading back through my notes of the various days, it's the post-laning phase that I'm really struggling at. I'm not really sure what I'm meant to be doing here. One last note on this game, I had a helpful if not a slightly passive-aggressive teammate. He did point out a lot and gave me some advice when I asked for it though, so that was nice I suppose. But I could still tell he was getting kind of annoyed at various things, which can just lead to it being a bit fucking agitating. He was more of a help than a hindrance. Still, I forgot to commend him though. So, off to a good start this week. Tuesday. Thinking back to yesterday's passive-aggressive teammate made it a little difficult for me to get stuck in today. I felt I'd rather not play a game where someone was telling me to go anti-mage. This just made me look in the shop for about 2 minutes, realising that anti-mage is actually a hero, not an item. I should probably just mute all the incoming voices, but you know, there is a twisted part of me that wants to engage in the internet today, so let's just push forward. Actually ended up being a pretty decent game. Fair amount of back and forth. I don't mind losing these sorts of games, it feels like there's some fun and there's some fight to it. Plus no one was telling me I'd played wrong, which is always nice. In the end, it seemed like I performed pretty decent in this game, getting a fair amount of kills, decent last hits, and seemed to be the only person denying, which, you know, yay me, team member over here. And at this level, you might not want to think about that too much and focus on it too much, but it's nice to start getting some practice in. The one thing about Juggernaut though that I wish he had was a stun. To be fair, at the right in this sentence I realised I took a weapon that did have a stun on it, but I've not been using it at all, my bad. I did take a pair of shoes that allowed me to run quicker though, and I used those, so, you know, points for trying maybe? This seems to be one major difference in this game. A lot of weapons have abilities attached to them and actual buttons associated with them, which creates a whole load of different ways of building your character and actual depth of complexity rather than just having your main skills outlined. That in mind, I should probably look at some build lists for my character for the next game. It might just allow me to get a bit more knowledgeable about him and allow me to change things up as I play to be more reactive against the team I'm playing against. Oh, and fuck Weaver. I need to look at that hero. Some of the skills that were going on there just didn't make sense and I didn't have a fucking clue what was going on. But that's all part of the process. Wednesday. I spoke a while back about not understanding people's advice until I have a go at it myself. It's the reason that I jumped into Dota 2 before watching any guides and that, but I did my homework today. To start this progression, I needed to look at some build guides, and it was all pretty enlightening. I stated yesterday that I started to see some possibilities of builds opening up before me when it comes to items, and looking at a guide just cemented this really. But it doesn't seem too complicated. If you were to imagine it as a flowchart, then there's pretty much one main path with a couple of checks along the way. You know, if a certain character's doing this, then I need to get this item. This allows me to be a bit more reactive in playing. It's a lot to keep in mind though, but there is an issue with this. I'm unable to get a read on what's really actually happening, so how the fuck are you supposed to react to something if you don't know what's going on? But I could start testing some ideas and some of the theory that's at practice here and see how it works out and see if I can make sense of it all, to be honest. So, with that in mind, let's jump in. The game started off well. It felt like I was making more last hits from the practice and my laning phase seemed to be alright as well. Had a very positive team, which in a loss can make you feel at least a tiny bit better, but it was still a loss. I know with games like this, your initial games are sort of there to rank you with MMR and actually get you in the position where you should be. So you tend to go through some wins and then some losses. It does seem like I'm in the losses section at the moment, but my team did say okay when I said sorry for dying, so they're fine by me and they got the support there, yeah. I do need to figure out that mid game though, so I'm going to start looking at a couple of guides for this. Thursday. After a bit of reading, I have a few answers over what I should be doing in the mid-game. But before that, I would like to say there seems to be very few concrete answers when it comes to Dota, and I think that's part of the appeal. Simple questions have multiple factors involved, meaning that the answer is not necessarily the right thing. It is more broad understanding that's involved. Aside from that, the mid-game seems to be more team-focused, which I can see one little issue with that. Public games seem to have a lack of focus when it comes to teams. But you want to be pushing for towers, you want to be team fighting, and you want to stand together, otherwise you will get singled out by the enemy and killed. So hopefully I will be able to try and bring that to this game. There's a lesson from Heroes of the Storm that I think is applicable here, and it's better to fail as a team than to go at it alone. And I think that, makes sense. That was actually one of the better games I've had so far. We managed to secure a pretty substantial victory, especially with one of our players getting 22 kills, or something like that anyway. I actually used a stun on my endgame item that I buy and even got to use it for some kills, which is brilliant. We could have probably won a lot earlier, but our team had a reluctance to go and attack. Towards the end, everyone was off in their own lanes and actually said we should group together and push, and we did, and we won, so I became that guy that I was complaining about before. I sort of think that with this in mind that there's a couple of pointers that you could use to show new players how to play and sort of guide them in the directions that you need to, especially from my experiences of people doing that to me. I think you should sort of be able to give them hints and show them the direction they're going without overloading them with information, but with that in mind you should also try and explain the actions of you and your team, because it can help them point them in the right direction and show them what they're meant to be doing. This I think lets people become a lot more receptive to the instructions and probably can help win a lot of games. Not that I am doing it in Dota, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about to be honest when it comes to this sort of stuff, but I think there's definitely something to be learned for some people when they're trying to help and aid. Friday. After all that talk of teamwork, I think I'm going to up my game. I'm going to at very least ping the lane when that's missing. That's meant to help, right? Well, it would have if I was in my lane at all. The problem is I kept dying. got a bit rusty without playing for a couple of days. I'll let you in on a secret. I actually record this by playing several days at once so that I can have something to upload, meaning I had a couple of days of downtime. Mind you, I ended up laning against heroes I haven't before and just lost horribly to them. This along with my teammates not doing well left us in just a fucking losing position. Maybe tomorrow, Saturday. This week has been very stop-start when it comes to my Dota play, both in my record and days played. I've had to move some of my stuff across town, meaning I've had an erratic schedule and not been able to do an hour a day, as I mentioned in the Friday section, you know, playing a couple of hours one day and then not playing for another couple of days. This does leave you feeling a little unpracticed when heading into the next game, but I've got 2 more games of Diginauts, so let's crack on and wrap them up. Interesting game. A lot of back and forth initially, which I really like. We got some good team fights in early, but then the usual happened. Their anti-mage got super powerful and just tore holes in our team, making it really fucking difficult to get ahead. So at this stage I'd like to talk about how the game lets people get ahead. I know it's a mechanic of the game, you know, thinking about carries and things like that, but it just feels like out of reach of my understanding because I keep ending up on less experience than everyone else. I need to really look into why, because I think it's making me weak and making me feel like a shitty teammate. So this will be my homework for now. Sunday. Again, I think this all comes back to my favourite Dota rant so far, the onboarding experience. I've not really talked about it in this video, so I may as well here. Not only does the game fail to cover some really basic stuff, it fails with anything more complex than that as well. I think this leaves a lot of teams blaming each other. It's never my fault, obviously, and adds up to the toxicity of the game. In my last game I had someone call me a dumb fuck, or something to that effect. He was probably right, but he didn't tell me why I fucked up, just this: I am a fuck up. I wouldn't mind, but the game could do with a better way of telling me how I'm a fuck up and why I'm a fuck up, so I can stop being a fuck up. Still, plenty to learn, I suppose. Well, Juggernaut just got banned, so no taking him out for one last spin this week. Actually, meaning I ended on one of my worst games I had with him, but there we go. As you might be able to tell, I will be changing heroes for the next week's run, try out a different role and see how that adds up and how that plays out. I ended up with Sniper, actually one of my favourites from my early play testing, but I can't really remember the buttons, so let's see how this goes. Turns out there's only one button to press. Q, really? Handy for someone in my position. I said it last time and I'm going to say it again with Sniper. His range is fucking alright, I tell you. I ended up in a solo off lane as I think 2 of my party members wanted to lane together in the same lane because they were partied up. But thinking about that, if I was playing with one of my mates, I'd want to play in different lanes from him just so I could know to tell him when I was cycling down to go for a fucking ace gank, not just chat to each other whilst we lane. So with that in mind, I took range as my first upgrade, just to keep pressure on my lane while staying safe myself, meaning I also had plenty of chance to get last hits. Though I'm about 30 under the target for a carry, considering I've only been playing for 4 weeks, I will not worry too much about this, it's something that can be picked up. But even against 2 people, they could just not get close. Maybe a ranged hero is where I'm at. I know where to stand most of the time so I can stay out of trouble and actually ends up doing alright. Got a couple of stupid deaths here and there, but they will die out over time, I'm sure. Other than that, got a lead and I maintained it. I noticed my team all wandering off to different places, so I typed in, let's group up, because it's my understanding that it's better to stay together. And they followed. That means I'm pretty much the team leader, right? I also even pinged the map a couple of times. Ended up being a nice way to tie up the week, to be honest. And that brings me to the plan for next week. Well, I think the other role that I really want to try is a support. In most games this means I can sit on the sideline and observe a bit more and try to pick up a bit more of the gameplay whilst helping out. It's usually a pretty decent way to learn. I'm not sure what hero, so I'll probably take a couple out into demo mode and try and figure it out. This week has ended up being a little harder actually getting the motivation to play. but it had the highs and lows that I want from this sort of game. And at this halfway point, I can say that I'm starting to enjoy myself, maybe? Right, catch you next week. Peace.